Hey everybody, so this, actually hang on a second. This is the new Primos Mono, and it's a bike that I'm actually really excited about. So this is Primos Cycle's second offering, the first offering of course being the Dame, which is their sort of gravel bike. The Mono actually goes in a completely different direction, and it's supposed to be this sort of return to basics. So it's a chromoly steel frame and a steel fork, and the fork is this cool kind of old school looking biplane lug design. It's got 3 pack mounts on the fork, as well as eyelets for racks and fenders. The fork crown is drilled so you can mount all kinds of stuff to the front end of this bike. There's also mounts for a rear fender as well as a rear rack. On this medium frame there are mounts for 3 bottle cages, 2 in the triangle and 1 on the underside of the down tube. I see a straight 1 1/8 inch steer tube, so it's a non-tapered fork. We have an external bottom bracket and a standard round 27.2 millimeter seat post.
See a cool air intake, it's got a nice fogger system, the T4 Turbo Dominic. See an AIC controller, it has direct port nitrous injection.
The wheels are 27 5-inch diameter, and it comes with Conti Cross King 27.5 by 2.2 inch tires front and rear, with clearance for probably about a 2.4 inch tire in 27.5. The drivetrain is the Microshift Advent X, so this is not the Sword derailleur. This is the older generation Advent X, which makes total sense for this bike because the shifting works just fine with the old derailleur, and because it's a flat bar model, you don't have to spend that extra money upgrading to the Microshift Sword drop bar shifters. All the cables, of course, are routed externally with this kind of old school naked cable run from the top of the underside of the down tube, underneath the bottom bracket, all the way back to this 6-inch section of housing by the rear derailleur. And overall, it's kind of just this mix of old school and modern technology into like an everyday get-around bike that just makes a lot of sense and is really affordable. For instance, of course, the steel fork looks kind of old school with like this lugged crown section, but of course it uses a modern threadless headset design. The rims are nice and wide to accommodate modern wide tires, but it still uses quick release hubs front and rear to keep the cost down a little bit and to kind of just simplify things if you need to drop a wheel out and load the bike into a car or something like that. Something else again is that the bottom bracket is an external bottom bracket, so it's nice and modern, but there's also a mount for a kickstand, which is something I actually haven't seen on a bike in a really long time. The saddle is the same saddle that I believe they use on the Dame. For me personally, it's a really nice saddle. It's clearly modeled after like an ergon type saddle. It's really flat on the top, nice and comfortable. So the handlebar width spec isn't actually on the website, but I do notice that they're pretty narrow compared to like a typical sort of flat bar bike. These measure at 25 inches wide, which corresponds to 635 millimeters. So actually a pretty narrow handlebar, which kind of points to who this bike is designed for. According to Primos, and I quote, "The Mono is our back to basics bike, inspired by the days of beat up MTBs and zero suspension. We started with the flat bar concept, but it naturally evolved into something else, bike packing ready, off-road capable, and just fun. Geometry-wise, it's playful but grounded, so you have longest trail at around 70 millimeters for a nice stable descender. You also have pretty long chainstays at 445 millimeters. It claims that it has room for 2.2 inch wide tires, but again, just looking at it, if you really wanted to, you can definitely put like a 2.4 in here. The stack to reach ratio is 1.52, which just means you're going to be a little bit more upright than perhaps on like a dedicated flat bar gravel bike. Now the drivetrain is the Microshift Advent X, but what I haven't mentioned is the gear ratios. So you've got a 10-speed 11 to 48 tooth cassette in the rear, and in the front, what I actually really appreciate is I think they maybe took my advice, or at least my comments in the previous Dame video may have partially motivated this change, but they reduced the size of the chainring from a 42 tooth down to a 40 tooth, which for me, an average cyclist, average power output, definitely will help you climb up steeper hills with greater ease due to the lower overall gear ratios. Now, I think I briefly mentioned the brakes. These are your Shimano MT200, I believe. Yeah, so these are your Shimano MT200 hydraulic disc brakes. It's like a really entry-level hydraulic disc brake, but they actually work really well. Like for the money, the MT200s are just about the best value per dollar that you can get. So basically they're 2-piston calipers. There's 160 millimeter 6-bolt rotors mounted to each of the hubs, front and rear. The only giveaway that these are not like a higher end mountain bike specific disc brake is really just in the levers. So the levers are like a longer lever than you would expect on like a modern mountain bike. These are designed for 2 or 3 finger use, generally what you see on like a city or a commuter bike. Now, one of the things I'll typically do on bikes that come with these levers is I'll actually switch the order of the clamps of the shifter and the brake lever. I'll move the levers further inboard so that when I'm riding, I can kind of just grab one finger on the brake and it's in a more natural position like I would on a typical mountain bike. One other thing that you might be curious about is sometimes on more budget-oriented bikes with quick release wheels in particular, you'll get a quick release hub with like loose ball bearings inside. These are actually sealed bearings front and rear, so even though it is an older quick release technology, the bearings are actually modern cartridge bearings, which is nice. And I guess something that you're probably interested in is the weight. So let's go ahead and weigh this size medium. Now currently the new Mono only comes in 2 sizes, a medium and a large. This one is the medium, generally good for people below about 5'10". Their first offering, the Dame, originally only came in 3 sizes, a medium, large, and extra large, and now they're working on a smaller size. So the Dame will eventually come in 4 sizes, and I anticipate that the Mono will eventually come in more sizes as well. Although I'm not entirely sure about that because the Mono serves a different population than the Dame. The Dame being a more gravel-specific bike where fit is perhaps more important. The Mono is more just like a get-around bike, so maybe fit isn't quite as critical. I anticipate they'll at least start offering a small size, so maybe small, medium, large in the Mono. This is all just speculation, I'm not entirely sure. Now, the stated weight for this size medium, and I'm assuming that's without pedals, is 26.2 pounds. I've already installed the pedals here, so this is like the complete weight of the bike. On my scale, this bike, which does not feel too heavy at all, comes in at 28.96 pounds. So we'll call it 29 pounds. Generously, if we say that the pedals are a pound each, so 2 pounds, that brings us down to about 27 pounds without pedals, which is pretty good for a steel bike. I mean, you know, if it's a steel frame, steel fork, you're not expecting it to be a featherlight bike. But, you know, so far this bike, you know, it's heavy, but it doesn't feel like a tank, which is kind of nice. So on the scale, it weighs in at 29 pounds with pedals. Let's just generously call that 27.5 pounds without pedals. So again, this is just a first look, kind of first impressions video. I haven't even ridden this bike at all yet. Building the bike was really, really straightforward. It was honestly less than 10 minutes. All you have to do is install the front wheel, which is quick release, so it's, you know, you don't need any tools to do that. The rotors are already installed. The rear end of the bike is already completely ready to go. The drivetrain was already dialed in. I did get some disc rotor rub on the front wheel, so I had to align the front caliper just a little bit. The tires are already inflated, like much higher than they need to be inflated, so if anything, I need to take some of the air out of the tires. And then other than that, just install the pedals and this little neoprene chain guard, remove the reflectors, and I was ready to go. If there are any gripes with the build process so far, I did notice that the front brake caliper mounting bolt was a little bit rounded out on mine. So rather than just kind of have that hanging over my head, I just swapped it out for a new bolt immediately. I happen to have some lying around the shop here. The handlebars were not straight out of the box, so I did have to adjust the angle of the handlebars to straighten them out. The headset, and in my experience, is actually pretty common for bikes that come like, you know, almost 100% pre-built. The headset was a little bit tight out of the box, so when I went to straighten the handlebars, I adjusted the headset to the proper tension. But other than that, really, really simple build. The bike is ready to roll right now. And again, when I put out the full review video, I'll talk about how the ride feels. I'll talk about the geometry. I may change some components, like I'm looking at the handlebars. I think the first thing I'll probably do is just throw a wider handlebar on here. I'll run the tires as is right now, but I may want to swap out the tires as well. But other than that, there you go. This is a first look video on the new Primos Mono, and I was really excited to get this bike in the mail. So typically I won't do a first look and then a full review video, but for this one, I felt like it deserved a initial thoughts video. So there you go. If you have any questions on the build process or any of the specs so far, just go ahead and drop those down in the comments. I'll be happy to answer as many as I can. I can't answer any, ride experience or long-term concerns types of questions yet because I haven't ridden the bike yet. So that video will definitely be coming. If you're watching this video, well after the time that I published it, the full video link might be down in the description already. So check that out if you're interested. It's going to do it for this one. Thanks again for watching. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't already, we'll see you next time.